Well, all right. Welcome back to Close It Now. Sam Wakefield here. And today I am honored and blessed to have a guest on that rumor has it you may have heard his name before. I'm going to go down just a couple of the things that he does and his organization does. And I'm sure we're going to dive into some things today. And I want to start it out with this quote. This quote is right towards the end of his second book, which we'll name here in a second. And it says, "We have the responsibility to grow at the fastest rate we can grow." And I love that. And it's actually going to become it's going to go right here on my wall as because it is a responsibility as we grow both as people and our businesses and things we're doing. So that is the quote. It is by Tommy Mello. As everyone listening, if you don't know who he is the founder of A1 Garage Doors. He has written author of two books, I'm sure working on many more, Home Service Millionaire and Elevate. He also runs the Home Service Expert podcast and hosts the Home Service Freedom event, among, I'm sure, other things. Please add if I missed anything. And he's, of course, one of the biggest influencers in the home service industries right now. So thank you for joining me today, Mr. Mello.
Glad to be here. It's going to be
Yeah,
a fun
man.
podcast. I'm looking forward to it.
100%. 100%. So yeah, so let's get going, man. I know that in all of the trades, you've of course you've been very intentional about being really public with a lot of things and really putting a lot of content out there, which we're very grateful for. But there are still people, of course, who don't know your history, don't know your story. So typically an interview session like this, well, just give us a quick highlight reel. How Tell us a little bit of the struggle along the way, and how did you get to where you are, and or just the highlight reel of how you got there, and then a philosophy that really drives you to have that mindset.
Yeah, there's a lot here, but I'm just going to jump into the meat of it. I'm from Detroit. Moved out to from Michigan to Arizona when I was 16 in 1999. Parents got a divorce when I was 7. Learned to work hard as a kid if I wanted something. And when I was young, I knew how to make a lot of money. I just didn't know how to keep it. And I had a landscaping company. I knew how to sell very well. It was I'm allergic to grass, so that was tough. But 2005, my roommate had asked me if I knew how to paint garage doors, and I did not know how to paint garage doors, but I learned very quickly. He gave me $100 per door. He managed a pretty big garage door company, and I went through the yellow pages and called every garage door company, every single one of them, and became their primary painter. So I could paint 10 doors on Saturday, 10 doors on Sunday. And my profit for those 2 days was about $1,700 take home after gas, tape, paint. Uh, and I kept meeting with technicians, and I learned really quickly that they were making great money. And this
Mhm.
is as Phoenix and Vegas were just on fire.
Sure.
So we started a company, me and my other roommate, called A1 Garage Door Specialists. And, the economy tanked. We didn't know what we were doing. I knew how to form an EIN number and start an LLC, but didn't really understand how to make it in almost a depression. It was the Great Recession. And but I knew how to build relationships, and that got us through. And in 2010, we went our separate ways. I kept the business. I just renamed it A1 Garage Door Service.
Hmm.
I got my mom to move out from Michigan. She answered phones. My stepdad did payroll and did the stuff I hated. I focused marketing, sales. 2014, I got a great integrator, but lots of mistakes along the way. I say the biggest thing I learned is in 2008 when one of my mentors, he's a CPA. He only worked with 10 clients, all $100 million plus clients. And he said, "I don't know why, kid, but I think you're going places. And I want you to read this book. And I would consider working with you at no charge if you read
Hmm.
it." And it was The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And I smoked this book. I mean, I read it in 2 days. And
Love
I
it.
said, "Can I have another book?" And I
Hmm.
returned that book, and he gave me the Red Bible, which is Chet Holmes' Ultimate Sales Machine.
Hmm.
Came back 2 days later. He gave me another book called The Richest Man in Babylon. And after
Hmm.
that, I was just on a learning spree. Uh, 2014, I found there's a book called Rocket Fuel that came out later, but I found my integrator, and he was like very good at the things I hated to do. And 2017, I found Service Titan,
Hmm.
and Found the best mentor I've ever had or will ever have. His name's Al Levy with the
Mhm.
Seven Power Contractor.
Love it. He actually was a guest recently on here.
He's a lot of wisdom. I'm a lot more animated off the wall. I'll probably yell a little bit, get really passionate. My tonality changes a lot. He just had me sit down and focus. Just
Mhm.
racehorses wear blinders. Shut the hell up. Let's finish your manuals, your SOPs, your checklist. Let's get everything dialed in. Let's build out your org chart and your depth chart. And he really just he made me sit down and focus.
Mhm.
And he made me think about systems versus, the firefighter I was.
Right.
Uh, but I always had this mentality of I'm going to focus only on garage doors. I'm going to plant a lot of seeds in a lot of markets. Hindsight, I wish I would have gone all in on the markets I did instead of I thought if I plant seeds, water them, nurture them, and it's worked out pretty well. I can't complain. Uh, I had to close down 4 markets. I just
Mm.
didn't have the right leadership in these markets. That was a tough, tough day. I've had to walk out of 2 more markets recently that I didn't think I had a potential to get to 3 million of EBITDA. I've had to really, I've had to change my org chart quite a bit
Mhm.
because the company will only grow as far as the people grow. And a lot of times there's the law of the lid.
Sure.
And when I notice somebody's at their peak, unfortunately they don't, but they might need a different seat on the bus or they might not fit the organization anymore. And that's a tough call to make.
Mhm.
COVID happened, best thing that ever happened. I know that sounds bad.
No,
I know
I
that's not,
100% agree.
and we invested all the PPP money back into the business and got really, really good. Look, I've been at the right place at the right time a lot of the time.
Mhm.
We ended 2022, got a partner, Cortec. We love them. They were in town all day yesterday. Uh, the business got to north of 27 million of EBITDA. Now we're going to hit right between 62 and 70, depending on how a couple of these small acquisitions go
Sure.
this year. And it's a great relationship. And, there's been a lot of, I would say this, I'm the type of guy that I build a parachute on the way down.
Mhm.
People say ready, aim, fire. I'm fire, aim, ready. I might miss the target a few times. Then I hit the target, then I hit the bullseyes before the other guys even got the gun out.
Right.
So I move fast. We make a lot of mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes.
Mhm.
And we learn from them, but we don't make the same mistakes. That's the difference I think we've done really well is we've learned from our mistakes. There's a lot of people that know they're doing the wrong stuff, but they continue to
Mhm.
do it because
Just
it's
keep doing it.
hard to
Mhm.
change. It's hard to do it differently. It's hard to hold people accountable. Uh, but yeah, I mean, what you talk about is radical responsibility to grow yourself. I was literally last Thursday, we call it Bring the Fire, all 800 employees.
Yeah.
And I made the statement, I said, guys, I need you to work on yourself more than you work at this job.
Mhm.
And I said, if any of you guys feel like this isn't the right position, I'll write you a letter of recommendation. You can put in your 2 weeks, and then we'll see you in 2 months because the
Yeah.
grass isn't greener. But leave on good terms because we've got our fourth guy that came back in 3 months,
Wow.
and they left on good terms. And I love it when they come back because they're a changed person.
Sure. Now they
But
know the
yeah,
difference.
it's been a fun ride. That's the sum of it. I mean, God's been good. I've been focused a lot more. I used to focus only on finance,
Mhm.
on making money, and now I focus on family, fitness, finances is still a big one, and faith.
Mhm.
Uh, I was not well rounded at all, and I lost a lot of relationships in the process of building this business. I'm not
Sure.
married or have kids, never been engaged, so a lot of people come up to me, they're like, I want to do what you did. And I say, are you married or do you have kids?
Mhm.
And they say, yes. And I say, well, I don't think it's fair to your family to do what I did.
Sure.
Even my sister and my mom and dad. I don't think I was the best brother or best son, or uncle. So it came at it's pretty expensive lessons. Uh, it's easy to say I'd like to change these things, but I don't know that I would. I think I would have been a better uncle and a better son, but business is hard. I always say I'm an overnight success of 2 decades.
Right.
People just say, if he can do it, I can do it. I say, absolutely, you can. And you
Mhm.
can probably run a 4 minute mile if you spend the next 10 years. But why are you doing it? Because why would you? By the way, money ruins people. it ruins them when they're not ready.
Hmm.
And I would say I've had to learn this last couple of years on how to keep money and how
Hmm.
to invest in family office and trust and do everything right. Because making money and keeping money are two different responsibilities and completely different, you know, they're just different skill sets.
Sure. Absolutely. So I saw some, this is, I love that we went down this road because I saw something recently on your social media. And thank you for being so public about a lot of your personal life because it's very, of course, inspiring. And it's great to see someone in your position. If we only see the highlight reel, everybody just thinks it's magic and all of these things that no one could ever achieve. But when they see your life, of course. And I saw that you were recently baptized and in church and made a big decision there. Would you care to share a little bit about that? I love to give people a platform to talk really about anything that's important to you. And how has
Yeah.
that
So
affected some of what we're talking about right now?
faith is a big deal to me. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I could tell you a lot of stories about that. But when I was a kid, I believed in Jesus. There's times of my life that are off balance on purpose,
Hmm.
and you get close to God, and then you get away, and then I got a grave lesson that I made a deal with God when my dad had COVID, and the deal is if you let my dad live, I'll be a better son, and I'll always exalt you. I'll give it to you
Hmm.
because you're the one that put me here. And a guy called me up. My dad lived. He's doing great. And he called me up about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he said, "Hey, you don't know me very well, but did you make a deal with Jesus?" And I got really weird because no one had known this story. And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I saw you on your hands and knees crying." And he goes, "I'm just take this for what it's worth. But the deal that you made, if you don't honor it, he'll take it away just as quick as he gave it to you."
Wow.
And it was crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, yeah, it was like goosebumps and like really weird out of body type experience. And that always kind of reminds me of like he's just tomorrow's not promised. And I got my life is fun tickets. It's like live each moment, enjoy the journey, enjoy the hike.
Hmm.
And so I had an opportunity. I called my mom and dad and I said, "Do you remember getting me baptized?" And they're like, "Your sister did for sure." And I go, "That's an important one. I might want to do that." So we go to this church called Impact Church. Travis Hearn is the pastor. He's actually coming on my podcast soon. And me and Bree talked about it. We're like, let's do this. And
Hmm.
and I'm very open with my faith. And I'm not trying to convince anybody to believe in Jesus. I want them to watch me,
Hmm.
and I want people to say, "I want what that guy's got." There's something going on. There's some
Right.
type of inner peace. There's something that it seems like he seems very content and everything he manifests a lot of great things. And
Hmm.
I'd rather them ask me because I'm leading the life they want than try to convince people through a debate to believe
Right.
in Jesus or get closer to family or get their body in shape. But I know if I do it and I
Hmm.
lead in the right way, that everybody kind of knocks on my door and says, what's, can I go to church with you? Or can I come
Hmm.
to a workout with you? Or can I meet your mom and dad? Because I've heard a lot
Right.
about them. Meet Bree. So that's the story. And I think it's important to find a church you actually enjoy. People go to church because they want to go to heaven. I
Hmm.
go to church because I get a great message and I actually enjoy,
Right.
this calm peace that when I leave and I enjoy the whole sermon. I mean, I wouldn't say the worship is like I'm not up there with the tambourine.
Sure.
I do praise God, but I like the message the most of it.
Hmm. Hmm. I love it, and it's so fulfilling. One of the things that I in this podcast I talk a lot about is your spiritual practice. Everyone has one, and I've never tried to, nothing specific. It's more about are you doing what is in alignment with your own core values and living in integrity with that. And if you're not, then that's a deficiency where we got to, make our lives robust and really fill out the weak parts of our lives. We know what we should be doing, but just like business, it's easy to do and easy not to do. Right. And so that's one of the things I help people so much is like, just do what you know to do in those areas, start there first, and then you can increase and grow. But let's just do what we know from the foundation. And it's kind of the same in business, right? We know to do all of these things. What has driven you to be able to do it where so many other people seem to consistently fall off? It maybe is a good question too.
Yeah, one of the things I've been really practicing is falling off intentionally and jumping back into the saddle because I think everybody has something happen where they get shaken up and they fall off, and it's really hard to get right back into the habits and the
Mm-hmm.
rituals that you go by. So I think that's a skill is, you jump off and you get right back on. But
Mm-hmm.
this idea of discipline is a discipline is 10 times larger in my opinion than motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline is a characteristic of somebody. And when you start with hard things and you do things you might not want to do, ask yourself what you're willing to live with that's not so good, like
Mm-hmm.
getting up early and doing things like cold plunge or going on a walk every day for over an hour at a fast pace that you just don't want to do. But when you get into the habit, when you start with hard things, you start doing other hard things. And it's
Mm-hmm.
simple as flossing your teeth 3 times a day and making your bed. And one of the things is I try to get into the state of flow, and that means everything's got to be orderly. I'm ADHD. So if everything's organized and everything, and I could turn my cell phone off and I could be all in,
Mm-hmm.
I could accomplish 5 times more than other people in the same amount of time.
Sure.
So, and then this idea of commitment is if you don't stay committed to yourself, you stop trusting yourself. Your brain's got a way of saying whatever you say is really a figment of your imagination. It's not real. The goals aren't smart goals. There's no time base to
Mm-hmm.
it. You're not committed. It's a dream, not a reality.
Right.
So my goals are all reverse engineered,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a deadline, and they're mathematically configured. There's an equation, whether that's macros to get in shape with workouts, whether that's KPIs in business.
Mm-hmm.
Family and faith are really hard to like. I haven't figured
Sure.
out the perfect
Hard
equation
to
to
put
make that happen.
exact metrics to those, right?
Yeah. I mean, tithe and spend as much time praying, but I think that's more of something that you got to make a want and figure out is what's your why? Is
Sure.
it?
Sure.
And a lot of people say my why is my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, huh, show me your credit card and your calendar and I'll show you what your priorities are.
Exactly.
Because, Dan Martell is one of my coaches. He wrote Buy Back Your Time. And
Mm-hmm.
he comes home one day and his fiance had left the ring on the table and said, I can't do this. I'm done. And he knew it was over. And he got a hold of her weeks later and she said, Dan goes, I don't understand. I was doing this. This was our dream. And she said, no, it wasn't, Dan. This was your dream.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy with what we had. I wanted you. You had a dream and didn't include me. And that's the hard part about being in a relationship is
Ooh.
you gotta have a team.
Yeah.
When Bree started to really go all in on her health, it was a lot easier for me. And I think people miss that. When you commit yourself to somebody, it's important with what they want to do in the future and where they
Mm-hmm.
see your lives growing together. And that's it's not easy. It's not easy being single and it's not easy being married. Choose your hard wisely.
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. This is one of the things. This is what I love so much about having the ability to help people with things like communication. It's fun when we're doing when I do sales training because I get so many stories of people that in those types of situations, like, man, my wife said she's gonna wants to write you a letter to say thanks because our relationship's better because I learned how to talk to people better. So, and it's so fun with those. I love that you're speaking into relationships because it's a piece that so many people miss. I I get so tired. One of the reasons I started this podcast, and I know you will resonate with this, I get so tired of going to our conventions and the trades and the running jokes from some of the business owners is how many heart attacks have you had and how many wives have you had? And it just has grossed me out for so many years. It's like, let's be better people. Let's live that life that's worth living because if we work to live instead of live to work, it changes everything. And I feel like it sounds like you're going through like a huge shift into this type of a transitional phase in your life. Is that correct, or am I
Yeah.
correct in hearing that?
What I'm learning how to do is the power of no. it's easy to say yes. And by the way, every entrepreneur that's listening to this, they understand that you could probably do anything you put your mind to. Uh, and Dan told me, he's like, you're gonna lose billions of dollars of opportunities when you start saying no more. But imagine how much you'll. And there's this book called Essentialism. There's this book
Hmm.
called Gary um, Go for no, not Go for No. The One Thing by Gary Keller. There's
Great
this
book.
idea of just extreme focus. And I'll tell you, look, there's been times where I'm like, man, my buddy's making so much money flipping houses. I'm going to go do that. And made a little bit of money, but it was stupid. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people in home service, specifically blue collar trades, there's always this shiny object on the sidelines.
Yeah.
You start taking the money out of the company right when it starts being successful. You put all this sweat equity, this time, this effort, this energy, this money back into the business. And now it's kicking out dollars. It's a flywheel. You put a buck in, you take a buck 50 out. And you start extracting out because we say to our husbands and wives, we deserve it. We deserve that Harley. We deserve that second home. We deserve to put the kids in this expensive school. If they just have a little bit more discipline and delayed gratification, it would compound so much quicker. And this idea that Jonathan Warlow talks about is build to sell. Your business is your best asset. When I learned how it works, it doesn't even feel legal because of how arbitrage works and how this
Uh-huh.
comes together. And it's like everybody's like, yeah, well, I don't ever want to sell. I want to give it to my kids. Every time I've heard somebody say I want to buy it to my kids, I said, can we get your kids in the room and have a completely honest moment? And I've done this several times.
Hmm.
Turns out the kids don't want the business, but it's your dream instead of their dream.
Right.
Would you rather have a night and not a trust fund baby, but enough money to invest? If dad loaned you or mom loaned you the money to get your own dream, would you rather have that and have a little bit more so you could enjoy it at an earlier time
Hmm.
rather than getting the business when you're 37 and working like a
Absolutely.
dog?
Hmm. Oh,
So
100%. Yeah, that's exactly. Well, and the other thing, I love this. I love this concept too because, when things are just given, it's easy. I was having a discussion with my lady earlier, and we're actually both of us are reading the same Ed Milet book right now. We're just reading Max Out, and we she made this comment about, wow, it's so cool to see someone at this position but hear their struggles and their story. And it
sorry.
was, no, you're good. I was just
I wanted to buy the book.
yeah, it's good. It's one of those he gives away for free. You just pay the shipping, but it's a little snack bag. It's so powerful because it reminds us that every master was once a disaster. We won't come across people that have achieved greatness that didn't have that struggle, because that struggle is what builds us into that. And it's not, if it was easy the whole time, everybody would do it, right?
No, you're right. And I just wonder what people's intentions are because they think there's two things I've found that I just think people are completely wrong about.
Hmm.
Look, there's a point of money where you're there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So money is important, especially when you don't have a reliable car to get you where you need to go, or food on the table, or you can't go on a nice vacation. But after that,
Hmm.
it's not as important. And people think money's the answer, and they think fame is the answer. And I was with a buddy of mine, Jeremy Miner, the other night, and he was just explaining how he's got to get all these NDAs when he talks to people, and he's worried about getting canceled, and he's worried
Oh,
about people
geez.
coming after him. And he's in sales, but that's nothing compared to like Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks. And so fame and this idea of money. Now, don't get me wrong. People are like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, but they don't know that I lived in the apartment complexes we owned, 1,000 square feet for 4 years, and drove the
Hmm.
oldest truck, 2012 salvage title Nissan Titan with 280,000 miles. Or when we went out to eat, I always had a salad because I didn't feel comfortable ordering a filet mignon
Hmm.
because I just didn't, I was very conservative with money and I started to save and I maxed out my Roth IRA till I couldn't invest in it anymore because it made too much money. I was designed to be a millionaire without a one or anything because it's ordinary millionaire of like you've invested and compound interest will do it. But this idea that this crazy amount of money is going to bring you happiness, let me just tell everybody, you get to the top of this mountain, and if you're at all like me, there's always another mountain. The difference is I go to base camp at the next mountain and people tell me how to get there 5 times faster. But the idea of everybody wants the views, no one wants to take the hike. And the people
Hmm.
that do take the hike, you get to the top, there's more mountains. So if you don't learn to be happy now,
Hmm.
you never will be.
Right.
And you think fame and money and these things are going to change, but they ruin you. I know people that get on drugs, they commit suicide, they become alcoholics, they become womanizers. You think that that's the answer. And I know it sounds so easy. Hey, Tommy's preaching here from a pedestal. But I had to relearn my life 2 years ago when the money came, like
Hmm.
different type of money. And I don't have any regrets. I don't feel bad about it
Hmm.
because a lot of people got blessed and they deserved it. And there's hundreds of people going to get blessed here in the next 18 months.
Sure.
And we're going to change the way the world. I've got big plans, and it's a lot more than garage doors, and
I
it's
love it.
way more purposeful. But it's a vehicle to get me to where I want to be.
Hmm. When you are sitting in those flow states and you're really vision casting the future, and this is something that is we've heard so many people over the years. You've got to, your why's got to make you cry, and you've got to write down your goals, and you've got to vision cast, and all of these kind of things. Um, can you take us through a little, especially for the guys that are like just hearing this type of concept for the first time? Can you take us through a little bit of maybe an exercise of, because you talked about when you're writing your goals, having smart goals and deadlines, and just a little bit of pointers to get these to help people get in the right direction mentally to start to think along these lines. How do they set goals for their life, and also create a vision worth chasing in their life with those goals?
Yeah, so I think you should try to sit down in a quiet spot without your cell phone and a pad of paper. And I think you should really write down how old you are today and write down every year of your life. And pretend like you're 75 or 80 years old and you're looking back at your life and when you're 41, what did you do? And you start to manifest. If you bought a house, what did the house look like? What road was it on? How many bedrooms? What was the square feet? Why did you buy it? Who did you spend time with there? If you went to Italy, start picking out all the restaurants you went to and what you did. Did you go to the Fifth Chapel or whatever? I don't even know if that's in, I think that's in Rome, but what you start to manifest, and I just bought Jesse Itzler's big ass calendar to put the non-negotiable times. There's certain
Okay.
meetings I have to be at no matter what,
Hmm.
committed to being there. Certain times with mom, dad, sister, niece, and nephews, and Bree. That's that's planned on, and there's no negotiations, and it's purely, truly special time. It's
Hmm.
not now. There might be 3 hours I say in there that I'm going to do the work if it's a must. But
Sure.
ultimately, what did we do to really start? Like have a plan that's detailed. It's not a fart in the wind.
Yeah.
It's real. It's like we've got an agenda. We've got a time. We've got the flights are booked. We know where we're going. I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to make a lot of money. And I'm like, okay, I knew to get to $1 billion, I need 2,000 technicians doing 500,000. I knew I was going to have the best recruiters. I knew I was going to be able to get vehicles and iPads and
Hmm.
uniforms and tools quickly. I knew I was going to need the best trainers in the industry. I knew that I was going to have to be able to greenfield into new markets. And I built this whole thing and it became a reality because there was such a detailed plan.
Hmm.
Uh, I knew exactly the amount of calls. So the booking rate, the conversion rate, the average ticket, and the cost per lead to get there.
Hmm.
I think people are just like, first of all, I love math. Luckily, I got to the point, advanced calculus. I used to carry a TI-83 around. Now, the calculator is the most open app on my phone.
I
I
could
mean, in my
literally write about
shower,
83 right here.
I literally like I'm obsessed with math, and that's why it's so easy for me to get in shape. It's just a mathematical equation. And people know how to get a six pack, but they don't have any. Mel Robbins wrote the 5-second rule: five, four,
Hmm.
three, two, one. Make a quick decision to not have that beer or dessert or at the grocery store put back all the shit.
Hmm.
It's this idea of like you don't have the ability to say no to the littlest things that create this little bit. It's great having a Twinkie or a donut or a cheesecake. It's great to drink. It's fun. But if you just had a little bit of ability to say no more often,
Hmm.
the results would just be spectacular. And I
Right.
just don't think a lot of people they're like, well, I don't want to live a life like that. I'm like, well, I still drink. It's just not as often.
Hmm.
It's very few and far between, but it's planned. And I get to go in the sauna the next day, sweat it all out, and go jump in the cold plunge. It's like you can still have it. You can still do all the stuff. You
Sure.
just need to just there's no willpower. And that's what I notice about a lot of people is they want so much, but what let me ask you this is the number one question people need to be thinking about. What hard are you willing to accept in your life to accomplish the great? Because it comes through the hard stuff.
Hmm.
And most people aren't willing to work like me. They're not willing to have their calendar organized. They'll never work with an executive assistant. I have two of them. They're not willing to delegate properly. They're not willing to fire when they know they should. They're not willing to communicate on the tough conversations.
Hmm.
And this goes through all of my four F's. And the future self is the fifth F of what am I doing to learn more this week?
Hmm.
What books am I committed to reading and podcasts willing to listen to? And I'm going, like I said, I'm going on a trip to go do a shop visit. I'm sure we're going to take out a lot of great things out of there and we'll implement them.
Right.
Because I meet people at these things, Sam, and these guys and gals, I meet them 3 years later and they're in the exact same spot, but they always have this great dream and they tell me all about it.
Here's
How
what we're
great.
going to do. Right.
Yeah, they're like, oh man, you should see, we're going to grow 50% this year. I'm like, have you grown 50% in a year?
Hmm.
And they're like, oh man, that turns out the economy and interest rates were up and they've got every excuse.
Right.
I'm like, why don't you set a realistic goal that you could commit to yourself that you could actually accomplish? And if you murder that goal, your brain's doing different things than
Hmm.
always falling short on what you told yourself because now you don't even trust yourself. You
Right.
just don't. Never once have you set a goal you've hit. You said you were getting in shape, you're not in shape. You said you were going to start going to church, you're not going to church. You said you were going to be a better mother, you're not. You're not doing what you committed, and your brain starts to not believe you anymore.
Right.
And that's the worst when you can't keep your commitments to yourself.
Hmm. So starting there with keeping those, so sounds like smaller goals, realistic goals that are attainable, but also stretch us a little bit, but start making the set goals small enough we can make sure to hit them so we can start building the trust with ourself again and then grows from there to step bigger and bigger and bigger. Is that how I hear you correctly?
Einstein, Albert Einstein said the largest thing in the universe is compound interest. These
Mhm.
little goals start to
Right.
compound into something great. And I'll tell you, I don't love budgets. And we're finishing our budget
Hmm.
because I feel like it puts me in a box, but that's how everybody's bonus is structured. Every bank looks at a budget and they say, "Can you hit your budget?"
Hmm.
Now, unfortunately, we're gonna beat our budget by quite a bit this year, but not nearly what I wanted. I've got Tommy goals. There's like
Sure.
your big hairy audacious goal, and there's a Tommy goal. And we fell short of it this year. I'm not proud of it, but
Hmm.
I've reverse engineered next year, and the only way I hit my goals is by asking for help from as many people as possible. It's how quick I can seek out the answers.
Sure.
It's not me deliberating in a room coming up with everything. It's asking for help more
Hmm.
often,
Sure.
and then saying, "Who do you know that can help me implement these things quicker?" Because now I can pay to play. Now I can pay. Now I just say I'm going to throw money at it, and it sounds crazy, but I'm going to go to the best person in the world for this.
Hmm.
Who's done it with 1,000 people, and just have them do this one thing. They're
Hmm.
a specialist. I don't find a jack of all trades. I don't hire consultants anymore that are just generalists. I hire specialists, and I've got a
Sure.
lot of them.
Hmm. Oh, it makes total sense. So in that journey, because for context, everybody, if you have not read either Home Service Millionaire or Elevate, you must read it. Or, of course, Drive Time University, because that's what you're doing right now on the podcast. Throw on the Audible and listen to Tommy actually narrates Elevate because I just finished it. He reads his own book, which is great. Excellent job. And what I love, some part of what I love about authors reading their own books is I could definitely hear several sections you threw in and just kind of riffed on some areas. I was like, hang on, I want to clarify this for everybody. Different than the book, which is awesome. Great to hear the input. But Elevate, for everybody listening, you've got to dive into this because Tommy goes through a big part of when you're in those places and how the importance of writing your systems and a lot of how to write some of the systems in the book as well. So everybody listening, if you're struggling with like I don't have a system for this, listen to this book. It will definitely point you in the right direction to get those things in order. But when we're thinking about, because I love to reference the book real quick, I've got a couple questions about that. But in that process, when you were going through And of course, you talked about working with Al, and he set you down and just made you focus. And what is it when you're writing a system for something? You, or of course, now your team leaders and division leaders. What is the steps to get that on track, right? Because we can write a system and it may or may not be super accurate, but you talk a lot in the book about tightening those systems up. How do you recognize when things those we have a system, but how do we tighten it up, right? Let's get started writing it, but the pros and cons, little best practice around systems. I know it's a really important topic for you.
Yeah, so systems, there's either three reasons something fails: no system, the wrong system, or the current system that works is not being followed. So I think the system is kind of easy. The checks and balances to make sure the system is being
Mhm.
done properly is the hard part.
Okay,
So,
sure.
and then the opportunity to delegate it is: here's what needs to get done, here's why it needs to get done, here's the resource you have to get it done, here's the checks and balances. There's a
Mhm.
lot that goes into delegating and signing off and creating responsibility from one person instead of a group of people. Because when everybody's responsible, nobody's responsible.
Right.
So it's effective communication and delegating the system. And then there's checks and balances built in to make sure it's being followed. And I think that's where people fail. They're like, I don't get it. I created this beautiful system
Mm-hmm.
and they don't follow it. But you didn't create a system to make sure there's checks and balances to make sure it's being fulfilled. So the system needs to have, it needs to be detailed. Anytime there's a SOP or a system, there needs to be checklists involved with it. And then there needs to be checks and balances. We've got data integrity teams that check on a lot of these things. And that's probably the key is you create this beautiful system, but you did not implement the system.
Mm-hmm.
And when you
Mm-hmm.
did implement it, you wonder, man, it went great for a month, but now they went back to their old ways. Of course they did.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody monitoring. There's no praise. You know, I'll tell you a great example. This is probably not the best example, but it's something I learned. Is that I paid 5-3 and $2,000, 5-3 to first, second, and third place, whoever lost the most weight. And this was a couple years ago. And I didn't talk to the husbands and wives of the people that work here. I didn't tell them about the DEXA scan. I didn't give them great diets to follow. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have daily acknowledgments to tell them how we're doing and who's winning and who you should be calling that, create a competitive atmosphere. There was a lot of weight loss,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I could have done 10 times better by communicating and checking in and check-ins and creating a better system. I look at that as an opportunity. So those are the type of things I'm talking about. Like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the system once. You went into the call center and you showed them the script and you handed them a piece of paper and said, "Guys, use this." It's not the way a system's deployed. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, look, if you just spent time creating systems and creating checks and balances for those systems, and that's all you did in your business, and you had collaboration, this is the most important part is let people make them know it's their idea. Let them put their touches on it. Let them
Sure.
find good, bad, and ugly because then they feel like it's their idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to want to do it more if it's collaborative. So there's a lot there. And I realize it's easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people, they keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you just
Mm-hmm.
have checks and balances for these things, it would change your life.
Love it. Thank you for expounding on that a bit because it is so important. It's for everybody listening. There, if you go back in the in the archives, some of the first episodes, I actually did. We had a. I was when I started the podcast, I was sales manager, sales trainer, and that's where I was writing a lot of the content that I train now at a company here. And there was something rolled out to the sales team from the top that was done the wrong way, and so I went through the whole process of like this is how to roll something out, and it is funny because I love when I read that part in Elevate. In fact, if you could just take a quick second and just give kind of a boots on the ground of what does the conversation to introduce something to the team sound like, because it's very similar. But yeah, if you would you mind taking a second and just kind of going over that. So I'm on your team. How would you introduce something to me?
Well, number one, there's a huge respect factor. Uh, I try not to break the chain of command. I learned this from Al Levy. Uh, when I walk in and I start acting like a dictator and start vetoing things,
Mm-hmm.
it's not good for the culture. So I, I'm, I call it. in influence, not manipulation, but I try to find number one, you want to roll this out to the person that everybody loves and they buy into, and it's kind of like the
Hmm.
person you're going to follow. You
Very
got to get
John
their buy-in.
Maxwell mindset with this, right?
You've got to get the freaking the ambassador of the system. You got to
Hmm.
find out who that person is, and you got to have them be successful with it and talk about this idea of what's in it for me.
Hmm.
What happens if you do this system right? Well, like, what do I get out of it? And if you start every system with, is there something that they get? And it doesn't, there's five languages in the workplace that it's not always money. Everybody says monetary bonuses, this, that, and even acknowledgement and
Hmm.
trophies and pins. But you got to get the ambassador of the program. And so I always try to say, who's the leader of the pack in this department? Who is the one that's going to rally the troops? Who's the one that's
Hmm.
going to be this true ambassador to really deploy this? Because I'm not the guy going to sit in the call center and work with every CSR.
Sure.
At one time I was, but I think that that's super, super important. And then to say, look, here's an idea. What do you? And if you lead with questions, let them kind of come up to the conclusion. You could guide with questions where you want them to go, make it their idea, and say that's amazing. But you've already got it.
Hmm.
And you said, why don't you do the work? Because if you find yourself micromanaging a direct report, then you got the wrong person. You need to get that person off the bus. If you're micromanaging people, I bring people in that could teach me. When I walk in the room with them, I'm like, I can't keep up at their particular uh, title. They're better than me. That should
Hmm.
be the goal, that you hire people that are stronger, better, faster at that particular uh, business concept, or it might be that role.
Sure.
And so let them come up with it. And then it's their idea. Let them get the input of their team. And just, you can put, I'm better at taking something. Well, have you thought about this? What if this changed?
Hmm.
And then they come up with it. And then it's like, that's great. It's my idea. I'm going to run with it. And then you create the checks and balances and you
Hmm.
help them come up with those.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it's their idea. You came up with it. It's brilliant.
Hmm.
Let's run it. Let's run with it.
Yeah. Run the play.
And I used to be the guy that would come up with everything. And it was more of a dictator mindset of like, I'm smarter. I know the problems. Even though I'm sitting behind a desk, you're out there in the field. You're taking all the hard phone calls. You're
Hmm.
the ones dealing with the one-star reviews. The people on the assembly line know a lot more about how to do their job better than the person behind the desk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love this. Thank you for, man, that's is so helpful in really any every element of not only business, but I mean, it sounds like a family board meeting waiting to happen. Like, how do we get our kids on board with things? How do we get all just really work in this life lesson that is super powerful? That's what I love so much about when you truly do business right. It's we're taking care of people that just happen to do whatever the thing is that the company does, and building those relationships, and it carries over so much between all of our relationships. So, man, I love this. I feel like we could go on for a long time on a lot of these topics because holy cow, there's so much to unpack. But it is getting close to time to land this plane. So, the one last question for you, which I love this question. What has got Tommy Mello really excited right now? What in your life is really like lighting the fire for you in this current season?
Oh, there's so much to be grateful for. I will say that. A couple of things, if it's a long answer. So number one is like when I used to walk into a room in my early 20s, I used to just be able to feel like I was invincible. I don't know what it was, but I was walking on this aura, this magnetism of people that I make eye contact. And I felt like that's back. I feel like I have a lot of like pride now because
Hmm.
I am staying disciplined and I'm in the best shape of my life. And I felt like I haven't felt this feeling in 20 years or
Hmm.
maybe 15 years. And it's phenomenal. I'm excited about that. And it's not about like girls at a bar, it's just about every room I walk into. It's like I believe in myself. I
Hmm.
believe I did the hard things to get to this point. I'm continuing to even go to the next level. The other things I'm really, really excited for, I got a big trip coming up to Bora Bora. But what I'm super probably most excited about is we're building a house in Sandpoint, Idaho,
Oh,
and
nice.
building another house in Paradise Valley. I was going to remodel the house I'm in, but I'm building another house. And I got this idea of taking the closest people in my life, and whether it's look, those are material possessions, but they're fun tickets because we could go out on the water, we could go snowboarding, we could go golfing, we could go shooting range, we could go bowling. Like I'm just excited to bring my closest, a lot of family and the
Mhm.
people that are I feel like are my family, and just create these
Right.
amazing opportunities. Like just have so much fun. And like I just want to take the plane. I want to go to Idaho and then I want to fly back to PV. And I just want to do that 5 times a year, a big golf outing with my good buddies.
Mhm.
And I'm just more excited about those things. But I'm also excited. A1's on this magical ride, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. And my goals have changed dramatically from I wasn't dreaming big enough, and I dreamed bigger than most. But now I feel like, why can't A1 be a $50 billion company? And I've reverse engineered how to do that, and it's not very difficult.
Mhm.
Um, if you look at the problem through a different lens, and this idea, it's not about the money. It's about
Mhm.
it's about this legacy of
Sure.
like it's uncharted territory, and the fact that the whole team gets to be involved.
Mhm.
I, I got a lot of things I'm thankful for. I'm excited about the podcast and having Travis Heard, my pastor, on there. There's a lot, but I'm very excited. Just my family's healthy. I can move my fingers and my knees, and I don't. My body doesn't ache. Look, sometimes you don't realize what you have until it's gone,
Right.
and I just want to be smell the fresh air and say, man, I'm living a life that most people that 5 years ago I would have killed for this life, and I can't forget where I came from
Mhm.
because it's all kind of here. So breathe the air and enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. We just read in the Close It Now book club recently. We read "The Gap in the Gain," which speaks exactly to this. We've got to remember, measure how far we've come, and have that live in that gratitude every day. Right? Love it, love it. Well,
I'm
thank you
good friends
so
with
much.
I'm
Uh,
good friends with Ben Hardy and I know Dan Sullivan pretty well. So
oh,
those
awesome.
great guys.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Excellent book. So for everybody listening, great book. Highly recommend if you're having this moment of I wish I could have, or you're having these thoughts of like not happy with where you're at. There's something actually I was reading it in the Ed Milet book I was talking about. He's talking about being blessedly dissatisfied. He's like be grateful for where you're at and have gratitude, but never satisfied with where you're going. Always content, never satisfied. But so love this. Thank you so much for being on the show, everyone. So go ahead and fill everybody in on the offer, what you were talking about earlier for shop visits and that kind of thing, and let everybody know, how to get in touch and to schedule that and coordinate that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Home Service Expert podcast for me, selfishly, I started it to learn from the greatest things. When I was going through a problem with A1, whether it was HR or whatever it was, I would just find the number one person in the world, and for some reason they say yes. So it's a compilation of growing A1, and I've learned a lot about family, faith, and fitness throughout the process of the podcast. But a lot of people are like, "Man, how do I spend time with Tommy? How do I learn what he's doing and see what that success looks like in the garage door industry that really we're pioneers of the space." And I got an amazing team. So it's a way for me to acknowledge the team when you come out and visit and do a shop tour. We take you through the training center. We answer all your questions. I get to brag on the team, and people open the doors. I will say, Sam, a lot of people that didn't have to open the door for me in the HVAC, whether it's Ken Goodrich, Ken Haynes, Leland Smith, Aaron Gaynor, and guys like that. I've been out to Ishmael's
Hmm.
shop a ton. Today I'm going out to Wyatt in Utah any hour.
Hmm.
Morris Jenkins, like these guys invited me into their home. Keegan Hodges, dozens, if not hundreds of people invited me and helped me. So this is a way for me to say, hey, look, I was just like you. I just was able to seek the answers very quickly. So come out. It's Tommy Mello. There's no W in my name.
Hmm.
TOMMYMELLO.com/shop. And bring a couple colleagues because if you're the only one, it will never get implemented. They've got to make it their idea too. It
Hmm.
doesn't cost anything. There's no sales pitches involved. I'll genuinely want to help you. I feel like the more I help, the more it comes back like 10 times greater. I don't know how that works exactly. I know God is good, but I know if I could help you get to the next level, somehow it just, and I don't expect anything in return. I'm not the Godfather, I'm not going to call you one day. But
You
you go
owe me some
TommyMello.com.
of this.
Hey, one day I'm going to call you. But no, that's what it is, man. TommyMello.com/shop. And if you want to, I put out a lot of content, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Uh, I really try to have people learn through my mistakes, not my success.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's a lot of that. I fall for it all the time. So just
Right.
know I'm not greater than anybody. Anything I could do, the message here is you could do too. I promise you. I'm not a great scholar. I'm not the best book writer. I'm not the best leader in the world. I'm not the best marketer. I'm a compilation of a lot of mistakes that I've
Hmm.
learned from and implemented the
Right.
right way to do things. So thank you for the opportunity to be on this podcast. And it was a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. It wasn't your typical podcast. We talked through some things I think people should really be focused on is systematizing their business and having a plan to one
Hmm.
day sell the business and help everybody in their business that helped them get there.
Hmm.
Because I do think I bought a lot of businesses. Not one owner has given anything to their employees. We had 25 millionaires come out of our deal. So
Wow.
I think that's important.
That speaks volumes, and it definitely speaks to who you are as a person and your integrity. So thank you for that very much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been fun chopping it up on the show today. So everyone, make sure tommymello.com/slash I can't even word today. tommymello.com/shop.
Yep.
Correct?
That's
Awesome.
it.
Go get a shop tour. You owe it not just to yourself, but to your family, to your company, to your employees, everyone that you work with. Go get a tour and learn some massive nuggets and take them back. And most importantly, implement. We always
That's
say
right.
here on Close It Now, success happens at the speed of implementation. So thank you everybody for listening. Signing off with Mr. Tommy Mello. Any last word here?
Hey, listen, I will say the last word is your speed of implementation is the key to success. And just call somebody today randomly that you work with and tell them how important they are. And I know you're hearing this saying, sure, I'll do that. Just literally send out a text, write it on a note, do a handwritten letter, do something, just something small, and watch how good you feel. Just tell everybody around them how much you appreciate them. Very rarely do we do this when we're drivers and we're hunters and we're trying to grow. Just just do this once and see how you feel.
Love that. Everyone accept the challenge and take it and actually do it. That's the implementation part. So thank you for being on today. Everybody else, it's that time, Drive Time University. Go be someone worth buying from.